Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Grow Through It podcast. My name is Julia and yesterday was the craziest day. Everything was just so weird. Like weird things were just happening all day. I'm very tired because I had to stay up really late. So I won't get into the details of work stuff, but our washer and dryer are broken. Our washer especially. Our dryer works on some settings, but you have to still turn it off. Otherwise, it'll just keep going and going. So our washer broke. I was doing a load of laundry yesterday morning and it just stopped working. This has happened before and we fixed it temporarily, but it's not working again. So it doesn't spin properly or drain properly, so everything is just soaking wet. So I put that load through 4 times yesterday trying to get it to work. So we kept trying to fix the washer. And then by the evening, it was 10 and it still wasn't working. No, I think it was about 10:30. It still wasn't working. And I had to put all the stuff in the dryer and just kind of hope for the best. I hung the towels and then I put everything else in the dryer. But because I had to stop the dryer because it won't stop by itself and I didn't want to cause a fire, I had to stay up until 12:30 to stop the dryer. The towels are still hanging in my bathroom, sopping wet. Paul and I stood in the shower yesterday for a solid 20 minutes wringing out the towels. They're still soaking wet. So that was just part of my day. Work was also insane. It was actually really funny. We were laughing about it because there was just complete chaos going on behind the scenes. And the kids were just on the floor dancing to the chicken dance. And it was just so comical at that point. So I had a day yesterday. So I'm a little tired. But I wanted to get out this episode because I feel like so many people need it. And unfortunately, none of the things yesterday I could really say no to. So if you saw the title, we're talking about boundaries today, saying no without guilt. Yeah, unfortunately, everything yesterday could not really be avoided. I did hand off one task that I knew I couldn't handle, but everything else couldn't really be avoided. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. I'm going home this weekend for Thanksgiving to see my family, so I will be coming home with a suitcase full of dirty clothes to do there, which is great. Don't even know what I'm wearing today or tomorrow. But anyways, let's get on with the episode. I just wanted to share that because I just wanted you to know where my mental state was right now. But moving on to boundaries, it's crazy to see my growth when it comes to this because only a few years ago, I really didn't have any boundaries. I remember talking to my therapist at the time and we were talking about boundaries and she asked me what mine were. And I honestly couldn't even name one. That was a huge wake-up call and I've worked really hard since then to understand them better and implement them into my life. The reason I wanted to do this episode today is because I've been seeing so many people recently get so burnt out and exhausted. And I don't know if it's just that time of year with school going back, business at work, or because it's getting closer to the new year. But everyone just seems so drained. And honestly, I've been getting really burnt out lately too. I think being a good person often gets tangled up in people pleasing. So many of us have learned that to be kind, you always have to say yes, even when it drains you. For example, you might feel guilty for saying no to a friend or coworker because you want to be seen as kind or helpful. Or you might think that setting a boundary makes you selfish or mean, when really you're just protecting your peace. This guilt and expectation of yourself makes you think that being a good person means putting everyone else's needs first. But really, being a good person means caring for yourself too. You can be helpful and kind and generous without self-sacrificing all the time. So we have to start to separate genuine kindness from people-pleasing. So first, let's talk about the different types of boundaries. The first one is emotional boundaries. So this has to do with protecting your feelings and emotional energy. Examples could be not engaging in gossip, asking someone not to dismiss your emotions, or choosing not to discuss triggering topics. These things are all really important to protect your emotional energy. The next one is time boundaries, guarding your schedule and commitments. For example, saying no to last minute plans if that stresses you out, limiting work calls after hours, or protecting your me time. Time boundaries are really important to me. I try really hard not to do work stuff at home, and I'm also very committed to my goals and my daily habits. So I know if I am not getting that done, then I have to say no to plans until those things are done, especially if it's a last minute plan. I think occasionally this is fine, but I don't want this to happen often. So I always make sure my stuff is done first before committing to plans. I also sometimes work my plans around what I need to do. There were certain things I had to get done this week, and I was struggling to find time to even do them. And I really wanted to see my friends this week, but I knew I just couldn't with the time restriction I had before going home for Thanksgiving. So I just couldn't hang out with my friends this week, and that's okay. I'll see them next week. But I had to say no to get my own stuff done. The next one is mental or intellectual boundaries. So respecting your thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. For example, agreeing to disagree on politics. It's okay if you don't agree with someone. That doesn't make them a bad person or you a bad person. Avoiding debates that turn hostile. There's been people in my life that I just knew I couldn't have a disagreement with because they didn't know how to debate properly and they were always right in their eyes. There's just no point debating with those types of people. And then lastly, limiting exposure to content that drains you is important for your mental and intellectual boundaries. So just being careful what you're watching and listening to and making sure it aligns with you and doesn't just make you stressed out or angry or sad all the time. The next one is energetic boundaries, protecting your energy levels from being depleted. For example, limiting time with energy draining people, not overscheduling social events, and knowing when you need alone time. These are also really important for me. There were certain people in my life before that did drain my energy a lot, and I just had to not hang out with those people. I had to cut them out or limit time with them if I can't cut them out. I also know I love my friends, I love my family. I love spending time with people, but I also really need alone time. That's really important for me. So I need to set that boundary of knowing when I need that alone time. And then the last one is digital boundaries. So regulating how you interact online and through devices. So not answering messages late at night, muting notifications during downtime, and limiting social media scrolling. And this kind of comes back to being careful of the content you're watching and listening to, but also just not being on your phone so much and not feeling like you have to answer everyone right away, which I'm really learning to be better at. I used to have to just answer right away because I don't know what this is. Maybe it's a little bit of OCD, but I can't handle when there's notifications on my phone, like the little red number beside the app. So I had to start turning that off for my email, and I just go in and check it when I want to. And then for messages, I'm starting to become okay seeing that little notification and not answering right away. And that's actually been very good for me. So why do we struggle to say no? There are a lot of reasons. Number one, fear of disappointing others or seeming unkind. I think sometimes people can make you feel guilty for saying no, whether they mean to or not. Some people do mean to make you feel guilty because they want their way. Others don't mean to. Or maybe it's just like your own fear of seeming like you're being selfish. The next one is validation we get from being the reliable one. So often we get praised for always being there for other people, always taking that extra shift, and yeah, just being the reliable one. And it feels good to get that validation. But again, we also have to watch that we're not doing it too much and burning ourselves out. There's also a difference between obligation and genuine giving. If you're just doing something because you feel obligated to do it, not because you actually want to do it, that's not actually genuine. Another reason we struggle to say no is conditioning from our childhood. We're told to be nice or don't be so difficult, share with your friends, which are great things to learn. But I think boundaries also have to be learned as a child to know that it's okay to say no. And often that's not taught to children. I've seen it a lot where kids are being forced to hug their family members or spend time with certain people. And maybe that kid doesn't want to do that. It's okay to say no. I always asked for hugs from like little kids like in my family or that I was close to. And once I realized that kids weren't really getting that boundary, I started to give them the option of a high five, a hug, a fist bump, or nothing. And I don't make them feel bad if they say no, because they should be allowed to say no. It's their bodies. Another reason is trauma or toxic relationships. Sometimes in a toxic relationship, or if there's trauma, you could have been made to feel really bad about yourself or feel guilty for not doing things for other people, even though the expectation was just way too high or unrealistic. So you kind of got trained to feel bad for saying no and then always saying yes. Fear of rejection or abandonment. Maybe you feel scared that they're going to leave or they're not going to want to be your friend if you say no. That is a totally valid fear, and I will get into that a little bit more later on. And then lastly, guilt and people pleasing. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but guilt and people pleasing are another huge reason we struggle to say no, and this comes from all of the examples I just mentioned. Next, let's get into signs you might need stronger boundaries. Number 1, constant fatigue or resentment. If you're starting to resent someone or you're getting frustrated with how little time you have, you're not getting your own stuff done, you're just exhausted, that's probably a good indication that you need to set some boundaries. Number 2, feeling drained after interactions. Some people require a lot of energy to be around and they're very draining. So if you're feeling like this, maybe think about limiting time with them. Or if it's really bad and you just don't feel good around them, it might be time to let that person go. Number 3, feeling on call for everyone else. So if you're always feeling like no one's really helping you out, but you're expected to be there for every person all the time, 24/7, and you are labeled as that like reliable friend or that reliable employee, and just feeling on call and on edge, like you can never really relax, that is a good indication as well. And then number 4, saying yes and immediately regretting it. This has happened to me many times. I will commit to something or say yes to something, and then instantly I'm like, why did I say yes to that? And again, that comes down to people pleasing and feeling guilty for saying no. So those are really good indications that you might need to set some stronger boundaries. So when we talk about boundaries, we don't always want to say no, of course, but there has to be some balance of these boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. So you're not just always saying no or always rejecting something or always just doing things for yourself and no one else, but they're filters. So you have to figure out what you can say yes to and what you need to say no to. And you can still be kind and still say no. Both things are possible at once. And sometimes saying no is how you make space for a more intentional yes. So like I mentioned earlier, if you helping someone comes from a place of guilt, that's not actually genuine. If you protect your energy and your peace more often, then you will more likely say yes to the important things and do it because you genuinely want to help, not because you feel obligated to. And again, you don't have to be rigid or selfish. It's about energy awareness. So thinking about how you're feeling in that moment when someone asks you to do something, or taking a look at your schedule for the next week or the next month and knowing where you can place your energy. So there's some things you can do to balance your boundaries. The first one is to reflect. Where in your life do you feel stretched thin? Maybe that is in a friendship, in your relationship, or at work or with family. Think about where you feel stretched thin and think about why. Then communicate clearly and calmly. Let that person know that you would love to help them, but you just don't have the capacity right now. Or if you are constantly getting work messages late at night or after you've left work, you can either reply and say, I will get back to this when I'm in the office, or I will get back to you when I'm in the office tomorrow, or just don't reply until you are back at work. The next one is start small. Don't go from 0 to savage. You don't want to all of a sudden say no to everything, but start small. Start just saying no to an extra shift here and there. Start saying no to going to an event you don't really want to go to. And lastly, expect resistance. Not everyone is going to like this, but the people that don't want you to set boundaries are likely the ones that are taking advantage of you. And the people that love you and care about you and want the best for you should respect your boundaries. Maybe it'll be a little bit weird for them at first because they are used to you saying yes to everything, but those people will come around. I think boundaries in relationships are so important and they really matter early on. So they set the tone for how you want to be treated. I think it's really important when you're starting a new relationship, whatever that relationship might be, that you set those boundaries early on. Because the earlier you communicate them, the easier they are to uphold. And without early boundaries, resentment and imbalance can grow. If you don't talk to the person about what you need and what boundaries you have, they don't know. And you might build resentment towards them, and that's not really their fault because they don't know what your boundaries are. So communicating how much alone time you need. Paul and I talked about this at the beginning of our relationship, and we talked about things in our life that are really important to us. So I've used this example before, but he goes to the mountains every single weekend. He goes snowboarding or hiking, and that is extremely, extremely important to him and something he was not willing to give up. So he communicated that to me early on. If he hadn't, I might have had different expectations from him, and I wouldn't know the importance of that to him as well. Then I might be feeling like he doesn't want to spend time with me. If I'm telling him that, he might be feeling like I don't respect what he needs. So again, it's really important to communicate that. Also being clear about values and deal breakers. So again, you could use the example I just gave, or it could look like talking to your partner about social media. Maybe you don't want them to follow all these Instagram models, or you want them to be respectful in their posts, whatever that boundary might be for you. And then having healthy digital boundaries like phone access or privacy is also really important. So talk about the boundaries you want to have. Paul and I share each other's locations, and that's something we're both okay with, and we talked about it. But some people might not be okay with that. We also would easily let each other go through our phones, which we don't because we trust each other. But if I wanted to, I could. Or if he wanted to, he could. We're not private about our phones with each other. But again, some people might be. And maybe that is for a bad reason. Maybe it's for an innocent reason. But it's just about having that conversation and seeing where your partner's head is at and talking about it, seeing what boundaries they have and what boundaries you have. And setting these boundaries is an act of self-respect and relationship respect. It keeps love and trust healthy. And the earlier you set your boundaries, that helps prevent confusion later on. You're not suddenly changing the rules. It's always been this way from the start. Now, if you haven't said it from the start and you're in a relationship for a while now, you can still set those boundaries. Have a conversation and just talk about the boundaries you want to set. Again, you might have some resistance at the beginning, but they should respect your boundaries. If they don't, that's a much bigger conversation, especially if those are non-negotiables for you. So a big thing we talked about is feeling selfish and feeling guilty for setting boundaries and saying no. So I think it's really important to reframe selfishness because being selfish has been so demonized, but prioritizing yourself is healthy. Ask yourself the question, does this decision drain me or nourish me? I've talked about this so many times, but you cannot pour from an empty cup. So it's not being selfish if you say no sometimes. It's taking care of yourself so you can show up better. You want to give feeling full, not from an empty tank. A few phrases to set boundaries kindly are, I'd love to help, but I don't have the capacity right now. Or I've set the boundary before of asking them to ask me if I can handle hearing that right now. Sometimes I just really can't handle hearing negativity. Of course, I will always be there for my friends and family, but with all the stress in my life, sometimes I just can't hear it in that moment. And I might be able to the day later or a week later, whatever it may be. But I've asked certain people to ask me if I can handle hearing it right now before they tell me something negative. You can also schedule non-negotiable recharge time. So set some time aside for yourself during the week. This could be an hour a day, 2 hours a week, whatever you can do, but set that time for non-negotiable recharge time. So that could look like going to yoga, meditating, reading, taking yourself out on a date, whatever it is for you to recharge, that will be huge for you not to burn out. And check in with yourself before committing to something. So when someone asks you to do something, you don't have to answer right away. You can tell them that you'll get back to them. And then really think about whether or not you want to say yes. Sometimes we have to say yes for things we don't really want to do, but it's just important not to do that all the time. And if your life is really heavy right now, you're really, really busy, and you're just feeling drained, it is okay to say no. So check in with yourself. How are you feeling this week? How are you feeling today? How much time do you have? How much energy do you have? Think about those things before you say yes. So I encourage you to ask yourself, where in my life do I need to protect my peace a little more? Remember, saying no to others is often saying yes to yourself. And that's not selfish, it's sustainable. People will actually respect you more for having boundaries. If someone is taking advantage of your lack of boundaries, they are probably using you. Those will be the people who don't like your boundaries. But do you really want those people close to you? Anyone who loves you will respect your boundaries. That is it for today's episode. I hope everything made sense. Like I said, I'm very tired today. Yesterday was crazy, but I thought this episode was really important because I've just been seeing so many people around me burnt out, and it's just really, really important to protect your peace. And it's something I'm still learning too, but I've definitely gotten so much better. If you have any questions or want clarification on anything I talked about, you can DM me on Instagram at growthroughit.pod, or I have an anonymous link in the show notes that you can ask questions on or suggest future topic ideas. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you would rate, review, follow, or subscribe, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it. Thank you so much for listening, and remember that you are worthy. See you next time.